Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda with the Office of Innovation Entrepreneurship. Welcome to today's webinar. We're here to talk about the 2023 Build to Scale program, and we're going to kick it off. While Jake is sorting out his audio, I'll go over the agenda, and then hopefully it will be resolved. But first, what are goals today? Oh, we can hear you now. Jake, you want to take it over? Yep.
Sure. So today we're going to go over the competition summary and program goals. So thinking through what did FY23 Build to Scale look like, and initially, what is the Build to Scale program all about? Number two, we're going to talk about the evaluation criteria and think through what were those common misunderstandings or common errors that we saw in applications from this year's cycle. And three, we're going to provide some tips for future grant writing. We are thinking that this Build to Scale program will come back next year, but we never know. That's up to Congress, that's up to appropriations, so we'll see, but knock on wood. Just a note, this will be recorded and posted online, and that there will not be any one-on-one direct feedback sessions available this year, and this is the debrief that we intend to give. So thank you for that. Let's jump in. So overall, EDA's mission is to lead the federal economic development agenda. We are the only federal agency that has that purview. Certainly there are other agencies that touch on this subject, but we are the one with this exact mission. So what does that mean? The three bullets below really talk about who we are as an agency and what our mission is. So certainly we support community-led economic development. This is not meant to be a top-down process, but instead a community-up process. So we look to you all as community leaders, as nonprofit leaders, university leaders, as the ones really directing the direction of our local economies across the country. Number two, as that federal guide, we are trying to help communities develop in resilient and agile ways. So specifically our office, the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, is focusing on those future-proof, resilient, and technologically enabled economies of the future. And number three, at Department of Commerce, of course, we're trying to make it easier for businesses, whether they are small businesses, large businesses, tech businesses, what have you. We are here to provide that type of planning, technical assistance, and infrastructure support that commerce requires. Anyways, we do all of this to promote innovation, competitiveness, and really that comes out via these investment priorities. So on this slide, we can see on the left side our agency-wide investment priorities, and this is kind of in order. Number one, equity is always at the top. So certainly in every project and application that we have, we want to see equity rising to that top. As we continue down, looking at the rest of these priorities, certainly you will see tech-based economic development in here. That is incredibly relevant to this program. So anyways, we help facilitate job creation, business expansion, capacity for economic development. This is what we're here to do. So when it comes to the Build to Scale program, we specifically need to look back at the statutory authority, and that's what Congress intended for us as we administer this program. So number one, just so you all know, this was the 10th year. This is the 10th year of the program. It was started in 2014, and it was established under Section 603 of the America Competes Reauthorization Act. This is important for all of you just to take a look at and see, hey, what was the congressional intent? And does your project or does your idea align with that intent? And then certainly you can see authorization under Section 27 of Stevens and Wilder. That is kind of our go-to document. So as you all know, the Build to Scale program is divided between venture and challenge. The venture and the capital program. The venture challenge then has its own 3 tiers, while as the Capital Challenge has its 2 tiers. Uh, every year we continue to tweak this program. So the feedback that we've heard in the past was for organizations that were just starting out in the TBED world. They wanted to see a venture tier that was lower. And that's how we created the Ignite tier for maybe the nascent organizations who are just beginning to get into this world to kind of have a foothold that they can get into. So again, please give us continuous feedback as you interact with our office on what types of tiers, what type of challenges in the future. Again, as long as it aligns with congressional intent, we do have some flexibility here to tweak the upcoming NOFO. So specific to our Build to Scale program, the program goals. You can read them below. As I talked about earlier, certainly TBED is the forefront goal here, but also equity, thinking through how do we inclusively engage historically underrepresented communities in these types of projects, whether that means they are the participants or they are the participating agencies or organizations who are partnering on even the development of the programs. So all of these right here are things that we need to see in build to scale applications, and we'll talk through these in greater depth. So let's talk about this year. This year was a huge year for build to scale. As I already suggested, it's the 10th year anniversary, which was wonderful. And we had 223 applications, which we received. And at the end of the day, we were only able to make 60 grants. So that is a 27% grant rate. That is under 1/3. So it was incredibly competitive this year. As you can see on the screen, out of those 60, 40 of them were for venture, again, for slightly lower dollar values, and then 20 for the Capital Challenge for slightly higher dollar values. As you can see on the screen, this map is demonstrating exactly where these awardees were this year. They are spread across the country in a really wonderful fashion. Certainly every year we have different locations apply. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't hit some of the states, but in our last 10 years, we certainly have. And that's something that we really are excited about, that this is a national program with a national focus. So we're going to get into the technical requirements of the build to scale application, understanding that if a application comes to us and it is not technically sufficient, we may not even review it for its merit. And so thinking through these initial things, these check the boxes, we need to have these in the application up front. This isn't something that we can go back to you and say, hey, X organization, we noticed in your application that everything was good except you didn't have this initial check the box activity. We're legally not allowed to do that in most cases. So if you did not check all these boxes, it is possible that you did not even get considered for that merit portion of the evaluation. So let's jump into these. Number one, and this is bigger than you think, are you an ineligible entity? So, for example, are you a small business? Are you an individual? You would be surprised of how many for-profit businesses applied and how many sole individuals applied for this award. So number one right there, that's an easy check the box. You must have an active SAM registration at the time of award, and that is also a check the box activity that we make very clear in the NOFO right at the get-go. You must have that SAM registration. Number two and three, and these go together, but certainly they're not the same. So number one, the missing government support letter. So for non-public entities, so any organization that is not considered a political subdivision of a state, we are required to show support from a political subdivision of a state. So this is incredibly important. Unfortunately, we had several applications that did not have these government support letters. And again, that takes them out of contention for the award. Same thing with bullet point number 3, missing match letters. So thinking through that required match contribution, we need to see that these letters have a dollar value, that they are committed, unencumbered, and available. Those 3 magic words need to be in your match letters for it to qualify as a actual sufficient match letter. If you have a match letter that says, oh, we might give money if they happen to win this award, that's not going to be sufficient. We need to say we will give money, and that money is, number 1, committed, number 2, unencumbered, and number 3, available. Really and truly, we need to see that information. All right, and the fourth thing on this slide, the under matching. So the Build to Scale award has a 50% maximum grant rate, meaning if you are requesting, let's say 300,000, you must put up 300,000. It's 1-to-1. And so in some cases, we would get, let's say an application with 3 different matched letters, and 2 of them were great, no problems whatsoever, but that third one did have a problem. Well, unfortunately, if we take out that third one, maybe that application no longer gets to that 50% or no longer gets to that 1-to-1 match. So that's a big problem. So if you have any question about your match sources or your match letters, it's often a better idea to overmatch in case one of those does have to get kicked out. Also, another thing to think about, ineligible use of funds. And we'll get into that in a little bit, thinking through, okay, well, they plan to contribute this amount of money, but actually that money was ineligible, so we can no longer count that towards your match. As I suggested earlier, if it's not documented, if you just say, yeah, we'll give money, but you don't give us the actual dollar value, we can't accept that either. And certainly, yeah, the missing valuations, that comes in play for in-kind contributions. So if you say, hey, we're going to have, let's say, 50% of our professor's time donated to this project or matched to this project, all right, well, we need to know, how did you come up with that dollar value? What is their salary? What is 50% of that salary? Like, show us the math. Again, give us those valuations and make the job a little bit easier for our valuation team in terms of matching or aligning those dollar values from your budget narrative to your actual project narrative, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the technical requirements. We'll talk a little bit more about these as we continue, but really these 4 are the major ones that really exclude our applicants from even, the further merit consideration. All right, next slide. So in our NOFO, we have a couple checklists which we provided in the appendices. These checklists were all about what do you need to include in your application. So it really depends on what type of applying entity you are. Are you a public entity, number 1? Follow 1 checklist. Or are you a non-public entity, number 2, and follow that checklist. And it's really important for us to see all of these documents represented here. The CD 511, the SFLLL, both talk about lobbying. We need to see those documents, even if you and your organization do not participate in lobbying. We still need to have those filled out to have it on our documentation that no, these organizations are clear, they're good, they don't do lobbying. The organizational documentation, for a nonprofit who's applying for, the Build to Scale program, we need to see articles of incorporation. We need to see the certificate of good standing, your bylaws, your establishing charter. We need to actually have those in hand when you submit your application to us. So thinking through these checklists, they're incredibly important. We put them out there for a reason. Please, please, please do not ignore them. They're there for a reason. All right, next slide. And then we have our ineligible activities. So I talked about this a little bit right at the get-go. In terms of what the Build to Scale program allows, it's different than some of our other EDA awards. And so the Build to Scale program does not allow for any construction. Right from the get-go, just check that off. If you have a program that wants to build a new lab facility or install a major piece of equipment which will require rewiring of your building to include, I don't know, new power outlets or new exhaust fumes or hoods for your building, that's going to qualify as construction. And so right away, that is an ineligible activity, and we'll have to strike that off of your application. Number two, prize competitions. This is something that our grant does not allow. I know many other grants in the innovation space do allow prize competitions, but not for the Build to Scale program. Same thing with the fund capitalization, equity investments, loans. That's not the programmatic intent of the Build to Scale award. Unfortunately, if you're going to look for those things, look at SBA awards, look at Treasury awards, but Build to Scale, the programmatic intent is not to put money into a brand new fund. Unfortunately, we do some of the other activities like hiring a lawyer to help advise on the fund, but not actual capitalization. Subsidies to participant firms. That's something that a fair number of our applications this year had included in their application. And again, that's an ineligible activity. We cannot take EDA federal money and pass it through you as the awardee to a for-profit participant firm. That is an ineligible activity. Some of the ones at the bottom are more standard. We do not allow EDA money to go towards advertising and marketing. We do not allow Build to Scale money for internships and wages or stipends for your program participants. Contractor providing matching share, that's another no-no. Because they are a contractor on your award, they cannot also be a contributor to your matching money. We view that as almost double dipping in it. So is not allowed. Is not allowed. And then this last one, and maybe this is obvious, but certainly we see this. I don't know if this year, but every other couple of years, there are programs for research that is really not focused on economic benefits. Yes, research for the sake of research is nice, but again, that's not the programmatic intent of EDA's Build to Scale award. So thank you for that. I'll pass this off to my colleague Amanda to get going on the merit review portion. But again, these technical review pieces kind of disallow you from getting your actual merit and your application reviewed in a more of a holistic context. And so really thinking through what are on those checklists and does your project idea align with the programmatic intent is incredibly important. All right, thank you. Amanda, over to you.
Thanks, Jake. So I'm going to talk about basically the scoring criteria for this competition. So under the Build to Scale program, we, and this is all in the NOFO, so we will tell you up front, I'd really encourage you for future competitions to read the evaluation criteria carefully, because this is the exact evaluation criteria we give all the reviewers who are reading your applications. So now that your application is technically sufficient, we're going to look through these 6 criteria and score it on a scale of 1 to 5, and then we take a calculation of your application is reviewed by multiple people. We calculate an average and determine how you score amongst the other competitions from there. This year, you'll note that our evaluation criteria, while it does change slightly a little bit year to year, like Jake said, we're always trying to improve the program that has been around for a while. So make sure, just because it was on the criteria last year doesn't mean it will be on it this year or next year. We do have a weighted score this year, so not all criteria were held the same weight, and that may have also contributed to your calculations. So if you scored really low on proposed solution and implementation, which is 30% of the score, but had a really high score on continued effects, obviously would not have the same impact on your overall score. So we're going to walk through each of these and talk about what a lower score looks like and what a higher score looks like. So for the criteria called leveraging ecosystem resources and assets, with a weighted score of 15% of your total score, the question that each reviewer was asked to consider is, to what extent do you agree the region's assets and needs are clearly defined, explained, and aligned with a proposed project? A lower score, showed that we didn't see if you had partners. It showed that you lacked evidence or you were unclear of what is going on in your region. We're really looking for you to understand the existing assets and resources in your region, or if you named those resources, if there was no understanding of what they do. So we don't want, your programs, this is an economic development program. We want to make sure you're not operating in a silo, and we want to make sure that you understand, that you're not reinventing the wheel for your region, or that you're filling a real gap in the system. So we need to understand what is the current status of your ecosystem before we jump in. Applications that scored higher in this arena had a very clear understanding of their roles in industry partners and had diverse groups of stakeholders that were engaged. And really, for this one, it was an understanding of what those folks were doing, what their role was in the project. So here you'll see a couple excerpts of some reviewer type comments. So saying something that scored lower is that your regional service area was defined, but the commitment, roles, and resources were not addressed. So we know they exist, but we don't know why they're there. A higher scoring one, on the other hand, they said showed that they were leveraging regional partnerships, using combined assets for success, and focusing, on a specific part of the local economy, and that showing that there was a strategic priority for the region, that the region was aligned, that this was a goal moving forward. So that was something that may have scored higher. The next one is the proposed solution and implementation, with weighted 30%. So reviewers were asked to look at the application and say, to what extent do you agree that the proposed solution is achievable and meets regional ecosystem needs? So when we think about the proposed solution, all of us work with startup companies in our work in the TBED space. And so I always like to say that this one is really focused on similar to a startup company pitch deck, where you're asked to provide a problem and a solution. This is asking you to provide a solution now that you've laid out what the problem and gaps are in your regional ecosystem, but also the how. I think a lot of folks who scored lower forgot about the how are we going to do this, and really just focused on the what are we going to do. So in a higher scoring application, we were looking for a clear, feasible strategy presented to meet SMART goals and supported by regional level data. So we want to make sure that your strategy is outlined, is quantifiable, etc., and a proposed solution is clearly stated, and the reviewer got an understanding that the solution will actually address the region's needs. Lower scoring may, like I said, often missed the how they were going to get it done. So that implementation piece was not clear. So the solution may not also be tied to the regional needs. So if we didn't have a clear understanding of what your regional needs were, your solution, we're not confident that it would achieve the results. So that was something we definitely saw, that, or there wasn't a problem identified, or that, again, most cases in lower scoring in this one was that they were missing an implementation strategy. Something, again, that was higher scoring might have really strong goals tied to it. Capacity and feasibility. So we're looking at the extent to which the application clearly identifies financial, human, and programmatic resources that will support the successful execution of the proposed project, and that the applicant team has the operations and management capacities to execute it. So now that we know what your problem is, we know what the solution is, we believe in the regional alignment, we've already considered that. Now we're looking at digging in even deeper to the how to say, is it feasible? Does this make sense? Does your organization have the right plan to get the right team into place? So a lower score might be an unrealistic workload given a maximum timeline. So for the Build to Scale program, we had a maximum timeline of 3 years. So if it felt like the workload was too big for 3 years, that's something that may have been considered a lack of a staffing plan or internal capacity to manage. So it's totally okay if plan is to hire somebody to manage it, but looking for that interim plan as well. We're looking at the cost of program delivery. Does the scope of work fit the bill, right? So if you're asking for a really high dollar amount, but your scope of work is really lax or doesn't have a lot in it, it might be a misfit in terms of how you budgeted or an expensive project, if you will. So, an example would be, the budget narrative provides no insight on the staffing plans, including not knowing if key personnel are in place. We're just unclear on what's going on with the staffing plan, if there are people, if there are not people, or the budget doesn't have enough detail for us to help determine if it's an allowable cost. That's another issue we saw in many budgets. A higher score application would have a project team allocation and skill set matches the proposed workload. The goals that were proposed seem achievable, and there's a clear commitment plan for executive oversight, particularly during interim staffing periods. So something to really think about. We understand a lot of folks will hire project managers after they get the grant. Totally fine. That doesn't knock down your score. But want to know that there's a plan in place in the interim, because that may take a month or two. So, a successful one, again, really looking for a really detailed budget and a really clean timeline and understanding of what those milestones are along the way. So if somebody else were to read your budget and you're unclear exactly what, a certain machine is or a certain, event is, if you read it and you're not fully sure exactly what that entails, that's really hard for us to determine if it's allowable. So that may be something to consider as well. The next one is likelihood of growing innovation economies. So this is 20% of the weighted score. So reviewers were looking at to what extent they agree that the submission will accelerate regional innovation economies. This one is really about, program fit. There's a lot of great projects out there that maybe aren't the best fit for the Build to Scale program, or may not achieve the program goals. So Jake did a great job earlier of talking about what are our overall goals, what is the statute, what are we trying to get out of this program? And this is the evaluation criteria where we're really looking at your narrative and your budget and saying, is it going to achieve Build to Scale program goals? So lower scores may say that a proposed solution does not have a direct effect on the region's economy. The solution may be misaligned. Like I said, not a good fit for this program. It may be a great project, but just not a good fit for this program. So if it's not focused on TBED strategies, TBED being tech-based economic development, or TBED industries, it may not be a good fit for this program. We may see that the impact it has may not be scaled at the right way, or we're unclear what the overall impact is. If this project is successful, will it support an innovation economy? That's ultimately where we're getting at. So if they don't have questions, so, a reviewer, might look at it and say that there's no understanding of how it's going to impact the long run of that region. That's something that may have scored lower. A higher score is if the regional PBED strategy would, assuming that you're successful in your implementation, that it's really going to achieve the goals of the program, and it's likely to lead significant gains for the region. The region will be transformed as a result of this investment. So, a positive comment there would be around detailed regional mapping, industry pioneers, academic partnerships, and equity all show the potential. They have the right people in the right places and the right roles to really grow that economy. So we believe that this is a good fit. Continued effects. So this reviewers will look at to what extent do you agree that the proposed project will continue to increase the ecosystem's ability to enable technology entrepreneurs start and grow after the grant period. This is, we're calling it continued effects. This is really looking at project sustainability. What is the plan for continuation after the period of performance has ended? So if you think, if you're running a pilot and you say, we're not going to continue it when we're successfully done with this, all of our problems will be solved. That's great. We need you to spell that out for us. Some lower scoring ones may say you completely ignored it. Many people did. They didn't talk about what's going to happen at the end of the grant at all. If we feel sustainability is not feasible, if the plan fails to address identified needs. So an example here would be if you acknowledge potential challenges and plans, but your plan is not really assured. If you're really relying on things that may not materialize, that may not be a lower score without any contingencies. So if you just say, we just think we're going to be able to fundraise the money, that's a plan. Do you have a backup plan? That's a way you can definitely improve your sustainability score. A higher score could include multiple contingencies if you don't have, commitment to continue the program. You can also show that, organizations, while they don't want to write you a check today for the program in 3 years' time, but they show, hey, we're really committed to this. That's a way you can show in your application other ways to, that your region is really committed to the work you're doing. And, a really high scoring one says a plan may have an evolution of strategies. So thinking through, the region may look different in 3 years than it does now. What does that evolution look like for the program, for your work, and for your region moving forward? So a positive example is, making sure that they're leveraging a team to get that done, that they know it's a priority and that's something they're going to continue, they're committed to focusing on that moving forward. All right, I believe this is the last evaluation criteria on the list, which is equity, and this was 15%. So we talked a little bit about it in terms of our investment priorities, but reviewers were really looking at to what extent the proposed project benefits are shared across all affected communities and stakeholders from target populations in an equitable way. So I will tell you that equity is probably where most people lose the most points. And it's really, again, we talk a lot about the what. We're asking you to describe what, but we also want to know how you're going to do it. So I think a really positive or a really higher scoring applications who did a really good job on this, really acknowledged, understood, provided data on the diverse and underrepresented populations in their community. They really thought about systematic barriers, really outlined that and said, this is built into our project that we're going to help address some of these barriers. And not only addresses them, but also leverages diversity and equity opportunities to really facilitate inclusion, so that they had a plan and and it was built into their implementation strategy around how they're going to do it in an equitable way. So showing, passion, showing projects that are striving to address and diminish significant gaps, really working towards that and having that embedded throughout their entire application. We saw a lot of applications that maybe didn't score as high on this criteria because maybe they only had a sentence or two, one sentence saying like, we're going to address equity. And those applications may not have scored as well on this criteria. So higher scoring on this criteria really is focused on embedding it throughout your entire proposal and really thinking about it. Lower ones didn't include anything, or maybe only had one sentence, and it didn't show that they had any understanding. So a way you can create this criteria to be stronger is to also have some data to back up some of your claims in this arena. All right, another quick thing I do want to note, and it's in the NOFO on page 24, is people want to know how, we make decisions. We look at the ranking, we look at the scoring, but we also have some grants officer decision considerations. So we need to make sure, that we have different access to diversity. We're getting geographic, industry, and many, many more. And you can see a list of those kind of things that we take into consideration for selection in the NOFO. So overall tips, we talked about technical review. We talked about merit review and evaluating the evaluation criterias. The number one tip we have is read the NOFO and develop a plan of attack. We have put out a number of checklists and things to help you make sure you get those technical requirements, and make sure you start early. Plan for match requirements early. As Jake noted, with congressional budget, it's not finalized yet, but we are hoping to get the same amount of money next year, so hoping to run this competition again. With that being said, it is a statute requirement that we have a one-to-one match, so you can plan for a one-to-one match under this project. So make sure you start fundraising early, getting those letters signed early. Another tip we have is have a partner organization read the application to avoid assumptions. If we can't understand what you're trying to tell us because you're using a lot of jargon, the reviewer may not be familiar with your region, you're using very regional conversations in your application, we may not know what is going on. So it's important to make sure that you're not putting assumptions into your proposal or assuming we can fill in the blank for you. So make sure that it's very clear and in very plain language, so we have a very clear understanding of everything that you're trying to say. Proofread your match letters and valuations. Jake talked about the technical aspects. We cannot tell you how many people do not do this correctly, and makes it hard for yourself. Again, if we don't understand what's happening in your application, it's hard to score you high on a lot of challenges. For us, we really look at the budget for that feasibility and capacity piece. So if we don't understand your budget, or if your math is wrong, there's about 300 different places in the application, there's numbers. Those numbers aren't all coinciding. Yes, we do the math and check them. It is very hard to really understand what you're going to do if given the project. So check your math, please. And again, program fit is key. So important, we made an entire evaluation criteria just on program fit, making sure that your program is going to specifically address the build to scale goals. That's something we really obviously care about and want to make sure that the grantees that we select are achieving those goals. So we're really looking to support those entrepreneurial intermediaries that are going to support scalable tech-based startups. All right. So we really appreciate you all for applying and your interest in the program. We hope you'll stay in touch with EDA. But we do want to leave you with some other resources as well. So despite not getting funding in the fiscal year 23 budget, we do have an opportunity for you to network and engage with other other organizations and continue to build your tech-based economic development strategy in your region. So I'm going to turn it over to our friends at SSTI, over to Casey, to talk about the TBED community of practice. Casey.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. I'm Casey with SSTI, Program Director. Really appreciate the opportunity to invite you all into our TBED community. Saw that some of you are likely already aware with what we do, but SSTI is an organization that's focused on supporting regional innovation economies, and we've been doing that for the past 25 plus years. So we work with state organizations, hence the name, as well as local regional nonprofits, including higher ed, federal and national labs, venture development organizations, incubators, and others who are driving innovation in their regions. And so for the last year or so with EDA support, we've been running the TBED community of practice. And part of that is convening groups that we call sub-communities that give you all a chance to focus on specific TBED work areas with your peers. So right now we have sub-communities around entrepreneurship development, lab to market, and risk capital, and we have plans to grow those based on what you all in the community of practice need to do your work best. We also have regular webinars and are developing a series of toolkits and useful research to help inform your work moving forward. So one example of this is our federal funding video series, where we've interviewed different federal program leads about how various funding opportunities can be used to support TBED activities. So you can find those on our website, ssti.org, and we plan to continue that series into the new year, so stay tuned there, but that's just one resource that's available to you all right now, in addition to our calls and events. We'd also like to, just get to know you all better and get connected with you after this call too, to learn more about the work you're doing and what could help you most moving forward. So I've set up a time to meet with you all. I can share more information about that, but it'd just be an open listening session where folks in your organizations, we're looking to get connected with those who are doing more of the programmatic work, more directly involved in the hands-on program implementation, design, scaling, etc. So those program folks to learn more about what you do and how the TBED community of practice can help. So that'll be in a couple of weeks from now, and I can share the connection information after the call, or you can reach out to us at tbedcop@ssti.org. Our email address is on the slide here. So again, that'll focus more on program work, not so much on grant strategies directly. EDA is still always your best contact for that. We're more than happy to direct you to just general resources, things like that, to help your future grant proposals, but we're most hands-on when it comes to the programmatic parts of your work. And then I'll just end by saying that even if you don't join us for the listening session on the 4th in December, you're welcome to take part in any of our TBED community of practice activities right now, if you haven't already done so. So you can find more information on how to get connected there, join our email list and everything like that at our website, ssti.org/TBEDCOP. So Amanda, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Casey. And yes, just a reminder, this is a free resource opportunity for coaching, technical assistance. So as you continue to hopefully do this work in your community, that you can have some support as well. So I do hope you check out their website and you do join their community of practice as well. Speaking of other resources, so of course, EDA rolls out funding opportunities all the time in the TBED space and others. So make sure you check out our future funding opportunities on the EDA website. You can also sign up for our newsletter, so we will spam you when our opportunities do come out. Do make sure in putting together future applications to check with application toolkits. So we put together a toolkit that supported the Build to Scale program. I hope you were able to use it. It includes FAQs, some optional templates that you can consider using to help you through the application process. We know federal applications can be challenging to use, so want to make sure you feel supported and know that there's a lot of resources that we customize each year for each funding opportunity available. So make sure you're checking out the program websites for those resources. And then we just heard from Casey about the TBED CO community of practice, but you can always reach out to us at oie@eda.gov in the office, OIE being the Office of Innovation Entrepreneurship, if you have follow-up questions about the Build to Scale program. And there's our website and our email. So I do want to note again, this was recorded. We will be posting it on our website, and we will be sending out an email with the recording to everyone in attendance today so that you can review this as well. So thank you so much for your interest in Build to Scale. We hope you consider other future EDA funding opportunities in the future. Thanks again.